All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the July Coffee Break with the Hub. This month, we're going to discuss tips for finding the best partners for your grant application. Our talk today will start by defining exactly what we mean by partnerships when it comes to sponsored programming. We'll look at 4 different types of partnerships and then take a closer look at 2 of those partnerships and the tools that are available for you to use while you are preparing your grant proposal. 3 things to keep in mind whenever you are looking for partners. Always remember your target project population. Clearly identify the roles and contributions of each partner, and then always work towards developing lasting professional relationships for any possible future funding. So what is a partnership? In the grant funding world, it is a collaborative relationship between entities to work toward a shared objective through mutually agreed division of labor. Partnerships and collaboration are central components of a successful grant proposal. Most funders require at least 1 or more partners, with some federal opportunities requesting up to 10. Having partnerships and in-kind resources strengthens your project's approach and can give you a huge advantage and greater visibility among grant-seeking organizations. Here are the 4 types of partnerships in sponsored programs. The first is collaborations. This is characterized by greater autonomy, but no organizational commitment. An example would be an organizational partnership where you're sharing information, coordinating efforts, but you do not share, transfer, or combine any services, governance, resources, or programs. You have no integration in your administrative functions, but you do commit to the project via letters of commitment. Then we have a strategic alliance where decision-making is shared or transferred. An example would be joint programming, where the management of a program of mutual interest to participating organizations' missions is shared. There's administrative consolidation of that particular program, but the partners themselves still operate independently of one another. Then we have subrecipient relationships, which is characterized as a parent-child or grantor-grantee type relationship. An example would be a multi-stakeholder community program where one organization is managing the work of the other organizations. Here, a subgrantee is accountable to the grantee for the use of the funds provided, and the subgrantee's work scope and budget is written into the project proposal. And lastly, we have cost-sharing and grant match partnerships. This is characteristics where one organization provides certain resources to support the overall work of the main recipient. An example would be a university that is providing a faculty or facilities for a community group's project. A grant match occurs when one organization provides a grant and the recipient provides a match in services, cash, maintenance, voluntary effort, or supplies. In this type of partnership, often not much is given in return for that support. So let's take a closer look into collaborations. Collaborative partners are government, health, education, faith-based, business and industry, social, and human services agencies at local, regional, and state levels that commit in writing via letters of commitment or support to use their resources to help your organization better deliver the services funded by a grant. Many times, a funding opportunity will expect you to have up to 10 collaborative partners. This means they expect you to find 10 community or state-level organizations that agree to support your project. In this instance, support means they will be involved in one specific objective of your proposed project, like at a resource fair, or your proposal is addressing a complex issue that requires coordinating multiple stakeholders, and these partners agree to participate as stakeholders. When looking for a collaborative partner, look for an agency that already serves all or part of your target population. Also, make sure to select partners that have a history and background in your specific grant application area for each grant or cooperative agreement you plan to pursue. Start with organizations you're already familiar with, but go into each conversation with the defined need of the partnership so you have a clear idea of what you are looking for. In defining the need for a partnership, you should think not only about what the partnership can accomplish as a whole, but also about the concrete benefits to your organization in particular. Each potential partner should be able to answer the following question. What are our short-term goals? What does our organization need to accomplish or gain in the next 12 months to stay engaged in the partnership? And then what are our long-term interests? What does our organization need to accomplish or gain in the next 18 to 36 months to stay engaged in the partnership? Once you have a potential funding opportunity in front of you, read that RFP thoroughly to determine if the list of partners has already been made for you. Some RFPs will have hard partnerships already in place. Some will list recommended partnerships. Some will discuss how the partnerships will be used to score your proposal. Oftentimes, these elements are all over the proposal, so be sure to read the whole RFP when you're thinking of possible partners. Here's an example of an RFP from a USDA Rural Development for Business Cooperative Service Program. As you can see, it isn't until page 3 where suggested community partnerships are discussed. Here they recommend seeking out advice, participation, expertise, and assistance of representatives of business, industry, education institutions, the federal government, and state and local government. Later on, as you keep scrolling and reading through, on page 5, the RFP asks you to address networking with other cooperative development centers and other organizations involved in rural economic development efforts. And then on the final page of the RFP in the scoring criteria section, the RFP notes that you'll receive higher marks if you demonstrate strong support from potential beneficiaries and formal evidence of intent to coordinate with other developmental organizations. So from just that brief reading of the RFP, you can compile a list of required or recommended partners to reach out to. Business and industry, educational institutions, federal government, state and local government, other cooperative development centers, orgs involved in rural economic development efforts, and other developmental organizations. So the next step is to think about your area. Who in your area is best to fill these roles? If you're developing a rural business incubator and you need partners in business and industry like this RFP, think about who the largest employers in your area are, or companies in an industry you are targeting with your project. To help you stay organized, this worksheet in the Proposal Enhancement Toolkit, which can be found on the Funding Resource Hub website under Toolbox, can be helpful in organizing your contact list. With this worksheet, you can track who you've been working with at an organization, what method of contact you've been using, and what has already been discussed. Once you have found potential partners, it's time to convince them to support you. Do this by preparing some talking points, outlining the grant program and how their partnership can contribute to your program. Prepare a grant fact sheet to take with you as you meet with potential partners so that they can have full insight into what a potential partnership means for you and the project to be successfully funded and implemented. While you're in the early stages of writing your grant, give your partners time to develop a strong letter of support or a letter of commitment that states their support for your grant application and outlines how they will contribute. The old method of grant seeking was to identify a ton of community partners who would agree to write a generic, and sometimes weak, letter of support. The new and improved way to create partnerships is with collaborative partners who agree to provide letters of commitment to support your grant application that outline specifically how they will support your project and what resources, if any, they will contribute. Letters of support are essential parts of your application. Without such letters, reviewers could, and often do, conclude that individuals named in the proposal have not committed themselves to work with you in the ways you have already described. One suggestion I have found from the Grant Writers Workbook USDA NIFA version was to personally draft your own letters of support. It may seem a little strange, but they gave some really strong reasons why. No one knows better than you why a given letter of support is needed and what it must specifically address. Secondly, you can't afford a poorly written letter of support from someone. You don't want that to be the reason why you weren't funded. And lastly, the example that you provide will save the intended author the time he or she would otherwise have to spend to write a letter of support. Almost without exception, that person will usually be grateful. So when engaging with a potential collaborative partner, offer to draft an example of what is needed. Deliver it by email with a clear expression that he or she can scrap it and start over, modify it, or use it as written. In most cases, the choice will be to embellish what you have provided, which will only make your letter stronger. Key tip though, be sure that each letter of support is on that organization's letterhead and that the letters are substantially different from one another. So make sure to use different font or choice of words or completely different writing style from each letter of support. Pen reviewers can smell deceit a mile away. All right, now we're going to talk about subrecipient partnerships. A subrecipient relationship is appropriate when substantive programmatic work or an important or significant portion of the project is being undertaken by another entity. The entity retains some element of programmatic control and discretion over how the work is carried out. The entity commits to a good faith effort to complete the design or conduct of the project. The entity makes independent decisions regarding how to implement the requested activities, and a principal investigator has been identified at the entity and functions as a co-investigator. There are formal steps that must be taken when engaging a subrecipient in a grant proposal. These steps can be found on the OES SharePoint site. Essentially boils down to making sure you complete a subrecipient subcontractor questionnaire, you complete a subrecipient commitment form, and that you've checked with SAM.gov to be sure the subrecipient is not barred from receiving federal funding. Always make sure that you remember that there's added time commitment when you're involving subrecipients, and you work that into your timeline. So tools you can use to find partners. To find collaborators within Extension, of course, there are the staff directories for each of Extension's divisions. I especially like the one from Cooperative Extension because you can filter through colleagues using their areas of expertise and which county they are working in throughout the state. Look to your state or local associations that you're a part of. Oftentimes on their website, they'll have a list of other members that you can connect with in your area. Flex your Rolodex and make some contact with colleagues that work in that field. You can also use our subscription to CostPivot to find academic partners. Once you're logged into Pivot, click on the Profile tab, and there you'll see a list of departments, centers, and programs at UW-Madison. Find the area you are looking for. Here we're going to just check out School of Human Ecology and view, and then we're going to go into the Center for Financial Security and view profiles to see what academic scholars work in that field. So there you've got 3 people who say they work in the Center for Financial Security. We go in depth, you can see what their research expertise is, what they are affiliated with, and most importantly, how you can contact them. These profiles are opt-in. You have to claim your profile to be added to the site. There are instructions on the side of the website that walk you through how to add information to your personal profile. The more information you include, the more people will be able to find you and connect with you. Key tips to remember when you are building partnerships. From the beginning, it is essential to establish roles and specific responsibilities of your partners. Take an inventory of the resources, human, financial, technology that your partners will provide. When engaging with a subrecipient, be sure to draft a formal memorandum of understanding. Engage that subrecipient in the development of budget and scope of work in your grant proposal. And for all partners, keep your lines of communication open. So in conclusion, most funders want to see partnerships in some form. Read that RFP to see if there are specific instructions on who you're expected to partner with. Collaborations usually only include a letter of commitment in the proposal package, while subrecipient partners that have parts of their budget paid for through the grant opportunity usually require formal documentation. We have tools for you to use throughout the process at the Funding Resource Hub, so never hesitate to contact me. Thank you so much for tuning in to this month's webinar. I will see you next month.